Hollywood Lightsides. Actresses of the Golden Age 2. More fun, little-known items about actresses you love. Here are lighthearted looks at 20 actresses from Hollywood's Golden Age. B. Lillie. She was a Canadian-born actress who also worked in America and Britain. Although she was in movies, radio, and television, her big thing was stage acting. B was very successful, and during World War II, she did a lot of entertaining for the troops. B was small and pixie-ish. On cold winter nights, she liked to wear thick, woolly socks on her feet. That had to be a sight. Elizabeth Taylor. One of Elizabeth Taylor's earliest movies was National Velvet from 1944. In it, 12-year-old Velvet Brown, played by Elizabeth, is crazy about horses and wants to take up the sport of horse racing. She gets a troublesome horse that only she can connect with. Velvet names this horse the Pie. Why? Because his previous owner called him a pirate. She called him Pie for short. What you may not know is that the connection between Velvet Brown and the Pie was exactly the same as it was between Elizabeth Taylor and the Pie. Actually, the horse's real name was King Charles. King Charles was originally owned by a society woman who had him trained as a show hunter and jumper. The horse was purchased for the movie for $800. Elizabeth went through a rigorous training program with horseback riding lessons, riding him 90 minutes a day and feeding him. They got to be great friends. As a matter of fact, Elizabeth was the only person the horse would cooperate with. King Charles would actually bite other people. After shooting of the film completed, on her 13th birthday, Elizabeth was gifted King Charles for her very own. Elizabeth carried on with her very long and successful acting career, but King Charles decided to retire after National Velvet, spending the rest of his life with his new owner. King Charles was also the grandson of the champion racehorse Man o' War, one of the greatest thoroughbred racehorses of all time. And, for no reason whatsoever, here's a picture of Elizabeth Taylor all grown up. Esther Williams. Anyone who knows about Esther Williams knows she was a swimming star in the movies. However, it's amazing that she ever got into the movies at all with how she reacted to her first big opportunity in show business. Billy Rose was a man famous for his big live shows, especially Billy Rose's Aquacade. The Aquacade was a major spectacle that featured all kinds of celebrities performing swimming acts. There would be a floating stage that acted as a dance floor. Even big musical acts of the day would perform at the Aquacade. If you got a chance to be a part of the Aquacade, it was a big deal. The Aquacade first appeared in 1937 at the Great Lakes Exposition in Cleveland, Ohio. Then it went to the 1939 New York World's Fair, where it became that event's most successful production. That's saying a lot, because the New York World's Fair was beyond belief. The fair continued into 1940, and so did the Aquacade. That same year, the Aquacade opened in San Francisco, California at the Golden Gate International Exposition. It was for this San Francisco show that Billy Rose was looking for talent. Esther Williams was the swimming star of University of Southern California. Her talent helped put that college's swim team on the map. Billy Rose decided to get in touch with her. Most people would just go goo-goo and starry-eyed over such an opportunity. Esther was not such a person. "I'm sorry," Esther replied. "I have an appointment. I might be free around 5, though, if you're still interested." Billy Rose was so taken aback at this cool reply that he actually waited until 5 to see her, and Esther Williams did, in fact, become the star of Billy Rose's Aquacade in San Francisco. It was lucky for Esther, too, because she became a major movie starlet because of this exposure. Esther Williams also became the stepmother of TV and movie action star Lorenzo Lamas. Her husband was Golden Age Hollywood star Fernando Lamas. Fay Wray. What does everyone know Fay Wray from? The girl in King Kong. It might surprise you to know that Fay Wray worked a lot in movies. She had a career that came long before and lasted long after King Kong. Fay was an extremely hard-working actress. Even back in the day when actresses worked long days, Fay dwarfed them all by working 22 hours straight during the filming of King Kong. Why? She was sitting in a fake tree, acting out her observation between King Kong's fight with the T-Rex dinosaur. She was sore for days after the shoot. Besides that, she was one of the coolest Hollywood personalities around, even during a time when celebrities were a bit nicer to their public. She was modest and shy off screen. None of that big star attitude. She was also very generous with autographs. Fay really liked dogs and ice cream, but drew the line when it came to men who smoked cigars. Frances Langford. She was a popular singer and actress from the 1930s to 1950s. Her signature hit song was "I'm in the Mood for Love" from 1935. During World War II, she entered an even higher level of fame as an entertainer for America's Armed Forces during Bob Hope's legendary USO shows. Her nickname was the GI Nightingale. With all this fame and success, what did Frances Langford like to do? Climb palm trees, of course. She did this all the time in her native Florida, and continued the practice in California. Why? Who knows? Maybe she just figured they were for climbing. Gladys Swarthout. Out of all the really accomplished singer-actresses from the golden age of Hollywood, Gladys Swarthout is probably not a name that stands out today. This is a pity because she was probably one of the most fun people around. Gladys was an opera singer. One of her most respected roles was Carmen. What did she like to do before a big performance to gain breathing control? She blew bubbles. This actually really worked. Plus, bubbles. Come on. You're never too old to like bubbles. Gladys also really liked spaghetti. She gained a reputation for being one of the best spaghetti makers around. If you went up to her and asked for some spaghetti, she would make it for you anytime or place. That's some spaghetti love right there. She also really enjoyed the circus. So much so that she would wear a clown hat to sophisticated New York parties. Harriet Hilliard Nelson. Before people knew her as Harriet Nelson, the leading lady of TV's The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, she was Harriet Hilliard, singer for Ozzie Nelson's famous band. Most people who know about the Ozzie and Harriet TV show forget these two were big music stars, if they ever knew that in the first place. That's just how successful their sitcom became. Their son, Ricky Nelson, became one of the brightest stars of the early rock and roll era. In her songbird days, Harriet was famous for her beautiful back. She had her maid massage it with a rolling pin, just like you would use it to make biscuits. Hedy Lamarr. The Austrian-born actress became one of the biggest starlets of Hollywood's golden age. She had a rough start, partly due to her first husband's extremely controlling nature. It took 8 years in films before her first breakout performance in the 1938 film Algiers. Algiers was also Hedy's first American film for MGM. Louis B. Mayer personally found and hired Hedy in 1937, quickly putting her on contract. However, she was kept undercover for months after being signed on and before the film's release. Why? Back in 1933, Hedy had starred in a controversial film called Ecstasy, made in Czechoslovakia. It is believed to be the first non-pornographic movie to portray sexual intercourse and female orgasm, although you only saw the actors' faces. There were also some scenes where she ran around naked while also swimming in the buff. Back then, she went by the name Hedy Kiesler. Needless to say, in the 1930s, This film was extremely controversial. It was banned in America, of course, but even the more open-minded European continent banned it in a lot of places. In 1935, it was finally released in America, albeit in a limited run in mostly independent art houses. It was still the subject of great controversy in most states, with heavy censorship or outright banned. The movie was a major point of contention between Hedy and her first husband, the wealthy arms dealer Friedrich Mandel. He spent a whole lot of money trying to buy up every existing print of ecstasy and destroying them, but was unsuccessful. Louis B. Mayer really liked Hedy as an actress and took a chance on her, despite the potential controversy it would bring to his studio. He had her change her name to distance herself from the ecstasy movie. Hedy chose the last name of Lamarr, after silent film actress Barbara Lamarr, per the suggestion of Louis B. Mayer's wife. She was given the female lead next to big star Charles Boyer. Although billed as an unknown, she was pitched to the public as a well-publicized Austrian actress. Well, that was one way of putting it. Hedy Lamarr was purposely kept out of the public eye. No interviews were allowed. No photos were allowed to be taken. She was rarely seen by anyone. That is, until the movie Algiers was released. As soon as Hedy Lamarr was seen in Algiers for the first time, she became an instant sex symbol. The controversy that plagued her since the ecstasy film just seemed to go away. In the years since, the ecstasy movie just added to the allure of the sultry Hedy Lamarr. A lot of people wanted to see their favorite starlet in a skin flick. Helen Hayes. Helen Hayes was a great actress who was equally adept at being dramatic as she was at being funny. In an unusual feat for any actress, the older she got, the cooler she got, and she had a career that lasted over 80 years. It would take too long to list all the accolades Helen Hayes received in her life. Simply, she conquered stage, film, and television. Her nickname was the First Lady of American Theater. She even established the legendary Helen Hayes Hospital, with its focus on helping people with disabilities. Out of all her many achievements, this is the one she liked the best. But a stuffy, high-profile actress she was not. Helen Hayes was delightfully quirky and a lot of fun to be around. In her house, she built a shooting gallery. The targets were life-size portraits of New York's most famed dramatic critics. Hey, even super famous, well-liked actresses like Helen Hayes got dumped on. Helen was mental about zoos. She loved zoos so much. Every time she was in a new city for the first time, her first stop would be at the local zoo. Aina Claire. Aina Claire was a popular stage and film actress. Like Helen Hayes, she was also from Washington, D.C. However, her name hasn't stayed in the public consciousness as long as her contemporary. One reason for this is the fact that her career didn't last as long as Hayes. Claire made her last film in 1943, and her last stage appearance in 1954. But she was still very well accomplished and well liked by the public, receiving some of the same honors as Hayes. Aina came up with a clever way to keep her famous curls in place. She moistened them with sugar water. Her curls would end up staying put for days, rain or shine. Jane Withers. If you think about all the Hollywood actresses who have had really interesting and unusual careers, Jane Withers has to be somewhere near the top of the list. Most people today remember her best as Josephine the Plumber, the spokeswoman for Comet Cleanser. This amazing run lasted from 1963 to 1974. She would be in around 30 commercials a year, each lasting a minute, and all of them getting heavy airtime. The only reason Josephine ended is because Jane decided to care for her sick mother, and she couldn't be recast. Josephine the Plumber may have been the inspiration for the character of Ralph Monroe, the lady carpenter with a boy's name on TV's Green Acres. Ralph was played by Mary Grace Canfield. Like Josephine the Plumber, Ralph Monroe is another great character you just can't recast. What a lot of people forget, or may not realize, is that Jane Withers started her long, fantastic career as a child actress. During her early heyday, she was a majorly famous child star, second in popularity only to Shirley Temple. Like Temple, Withers also worked at Fox. She even acted with Shirley Temple. Both girls were heavily merchandised at the time. There were a number of Shirley Temple and Jane Withers products on the market. Shirley Temple, quite famously, had her own little gas-powered racing car given to her in 1936 by co-star Bill Bojangles Robinson. Jane Withers, on the other hand, had a motorboat that she drove herself. One of the most famous items of Shirley Temple merchandise was the Shirley Temple doll. Jane Withers, on the other hand, built one of the greatest doll collections the world has ever seen. By the early 1940s, she had over 3,500 dolls. By 1988, she had over 12,000 dolls. Where Temple played sweet, likable characters, Withers tended to play obnoxious little bratty girls or tomboys. This didn't seem to bother Withers at all, nor did it affect her personality. She was noted for being extremely easy to work with and nice. It's amazing how the lives of Shirley Temple and Jane Withers paralleled each other. Both of them grew up to be knockouts by their teenage years, but both had careers that declined by their teens. Both were stuck playing juvenile roles they weren't happy with when they really just wanted to grow up. Because of this, Withers retired from films at age 21, Temple at age 22. Both Withers and Temple made career comebacks. Withers, retiring in 1947, didn't come back until the movie Giant in 1956. Temple, retiring in 1950, didn't come back until 1958 with her TV show Shirley Temple's Storybook. Both of them continued to enjoy decent success until the mid-1960s, before they had major career shifts. For Withers, her major career change was Josephine the Plumber in 1963. After an unsuccessful TV pilot in 1965, Shirley Temple got into politics as a member of the Republican Party. After a shaky start, she became quite successful as a diplomat. Odd enough, both women had first marriages that ended in divorce. Both of them outlived their second husbands. Jane, however, married one more time after that. Joan Crawford. Her real name was Lucille Fay Lesueur. Now this sounds like a movie star name. However, Joan Crawford had a shaky start in show business, and some people thought her real name sounded fake. Pete Smith, the publicity head for MGM, recognized her potential to become a major star, but really felt her name held her back. He even told studio head Louis B. Mayer that he thought her last name sounded too much like Sewer. Smith organized a contest called Name the Star. It appeared in issues of Movie Weekly and allowed readers to select her new stage name. The initial choice was Joan Arden. Another actress was later found to have claimed that name, so the alternate surname of Crawford was chosen instead. Where Pete Smith thought Lesueur sounded like sewer, Joan thought Crawford sounded like crawfish, and absolutely hated the choice for last name. She had also wanted her first name to be pronounced Joanne. Still, she came to accept the name after she became so incredibly popular. The rather regular name of Joan Crawford was the fake name, and Lucille Lesueur was the real name. Go figure. Joan also collected sports scarves and felt hats as a hobby. Katherine Hepburn. Since early childhood, Katherine Hepburn was interested in acting. So much so that as a young girl she formed a stock company in the back of her parents' summer home. She had a number of hobbies, including tennis and swimming. Her most successful hobby was golfing. Katherine was so good at golfing that she was runner-up for the Connecticut Women's Golf Championship. Katherine designed her own clothes and had an infatuation with bizarre hats. One of her pets was a gibbon ape. After only 3 movies in less than a year's time, Katherine won the Academy Award for Best Actress. This is an extremely impressive achievement. Her most famous movies were yet to come. Louise Rainer. Perhaps more impressive than Katherine Hepburn's Oscar achievement is what Louise Rainer did. Louise was a German-born actress. She came to Hollywood in 1935 and took the town by storm. She got her first American film role soon after in Escapade. She was the leading lady next to big star William Powell. Louise didn't even know how to speak English. Louis B. Mayer liked Louise, however, and hired actress Constance Collier to teach Louise the language. The young actress's English improved rapidly. Escapade gave Louise a lot of good publicity, but she disliked how she appeared in the film, thinking that she looked too big, with a big face. But audiences saw her as the next big sensation. After only her second film, The Great Ziegfeld, she won her first Academy Award for Best Actress. Like Katherine Hepburn, she won it after appearing in Hollywood films for less than a year. Hepburn, though, had been in 3 films, and Louise only 2. Raynor also became the first thespian, male or female, to win back-to-back Academy Awards. Once again, she won the Oscar for Best Actress in her very next film, The Good Earth. So how come Louise Rainer isn't one of those really big names from old Hollywood today? Despite fantastic success, she quit making movies in 1938. This was by her own choice. Hollywood didn't dismiss Louise Rainer. She dismissed Hollywood. Louise also disrespected Hollywood by saying it was impossible to carry on an intellectual conversation there. When Louise tried to return to acting shortly after, she had made an enemy of Louis B. Mayer and a reputation for being flaky. She also didn't like to give interviews. Basically, she became the type of Hollywood personality people don't like. It was very hard for her to find more film work, and the 1943 film Hostages was her last big shot. Even though she was lucky to get it, she dismissed the movie early on as not being Oscar-worthy. Louise did not appear in another movie until 1997. She made various appearances on television from 1949 to 1991, but nothing major. It certainly wasn't reflective of her early film success. Madeline Carroll. She was an extremely popular English actress in the 1930s, popular in both America and Britain. At her peak, in 1938, she was the highest paid actress. Her last film was in 1949, but she continued to work in radio and theater through 1959. Madeline became famous for playing the ice-cold blonde parts in films like Alfred Hitchcock's The 39 Steps. She also liked to wear a lot of ice, of the jewelry variety. She refused to act in anything that wasn't real jewelry, as she thought it brought her luck. Costume jewelry wouldn't do. The studio had to rent the jewelry, then hire a detective to guard it. Madge Evans. She started her fantastic career at the age of 2 years old. Madge modeled in print advertisements, sitting on giant bars of fairy soap. This would have been in 1911. Her career lasted until 1958. Wow! Madge was an extremely accomplished stage and film actress. However, she never displayed any attitude that made her hard to work with, even after she became a star so early in life. Marlene Dietrich. Fans of Marlene are aware of her quirkiness. There are a few things about her, though, that even her biggest admirers may not know. Marlene had to learn how to roll cigarettes for a movie part. She became better at rolling cigarettes than most men, including real working cowboys who did it all the time. When she was a little girl, Marlene wanted to be a violin virtuoso. She might have been a master, but overpractice rendered her left hand useless, forcing her into another career choice. Besides being one of the most photographed women in the world, Marlene herself was an excellent photographer. Maureen OSullivan. She was a popular actress with a very long and enviable career. Most people know her best for playing Jane in the Johnny Weissmuller era of Tarzan movies. Most days for lunch, she liked eating baked potato skins. She couldn't get enough of them. Maybe it was the Irish in her. Myrna Loy. Like Maureen OSullivan, Myrna Loy was of Irish lineage. Eventually, Myrna Loy became a big star. One of her most famous roles was Nora Charles in the Thin Man movie series. Long before that fame, though, Myrna had to take whatever part she could get. Myrna was pretty, but she had a peculiar look about her. Casting directors mistook her for being Asian. She was entirely American and of Irish ancestry. But acting was acting, and Myrna liked to work, so she took those parts. If she wasn't cast as Orientals or Hispanic ladies, she was usually locked down in parts as trashy women, the vamp roles. Fortunately, she was able to get past this typecasting and was able to put out some really good work. And last but not least, Norma Shearer. Norma Shearer was an incredibly famous actress in her day. Early in her career, she came to MGM Studios and met her future husband. He was so small and youthful that Norma mistook him for the office boy. It turned out he was Irving Thalberg, the vice president and head of production under studio boss Louis B. Mayer. He's the one who actually sent for Norma. Whoops! Nothing like a good first impression. Real tragedy sometimes follows Shakespeare's tragedies. When filming Romeo and Juliet in 1936, Norma's husband died quite unexpectedly. Although he always looked young and healthy, Irving had heart problems brought on by overwork. What finally got him was pneumonia. It came on quick, worsened steadily, and finally took him at the age of 37. This shook up Hollywood, as just about everyone in the show business community really liked him. You don't hear his name as much as you should, but he was a big part of MGM's early success and left behind quite a legacy. Louis B. Mayer was still the boss of MGM until 1951, but things were never quite the same for him. Irving Thalberg's death also led to Norma Shearer's early retirement in 1942. Thalberg actually encouraged her acting career and was a driving force. After he was gone, she just didn't feel the same about it anymore. After Irving's death, Norma briefly dated the younger Jimmy Stewart. Then she had an affair with the married actor George Raft. That became quite a scandal, and more trouble than what it was worth. George Raft's wife wouldn't grant him a divorce to marry Norma Shearer, and MGM boss Louis B. Mayer didn't like it at all, so Norma ended it. After her retirement, though, Norma married Martin Arouge, a World War II Navy aviator and a former ski instructor to her children. This marriage lasted for the rest of her life. That's all for now. Oh man, it's over already? Don't worry, the great part about videos is that you can replay them. Until next time, keep it light.
You're a builder-upper, a breaker-downer, a holder-outer, and I'm a giver-inner. Sad but true, I'm a sapper too, taking it from a taker-over like you. Don't know where